Hi, everybody. This is the Upset the Setup action series for the documentary Stockton on My Mind. And today I'm in a great situation because I'm talking to two brilliant men. So, Raymond and Sammy, why don't you tell us more about yourselves?
Hello, my name is Samuel Nunez. I am the founding executive director of Fathers and Families of San Joaquin, aka also known as Families for Social Justice. We are a organization that builds power from the ground up, and we're on the front lines of racial justice and transformative community healing. We're a human rights organization with our mission to promote the social, cultural, spiritual, and economic renewal of the most vulnerable families in Stockton, the greater San Joaquin Valley.
My name is Raymond Aguilar. I work for Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. I'm in the Youth and Racial Justice Department, helping to stop the school to prison pipeline.
So, you both mentioned the school to prison pipeline. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that is in your own words and how's that affected the communities in Stockton?
Yeah, let's get right down to the heart of the matter. I think race and place matters when we talk about the school prison pipeline, which actually has resulted in countless children, in particular children of color, that have been pipelined into incarceration.
When you have a young person, predominantly persons of color, black and brown folks like myself, going to school and trying to do everything we can, but we have all this trauma at home, and the school system is not designed to help to deal with individuals with trauma. Instead, they kick us out, suspend us, or just altogether we have no school experience. And so when you kick an individual like that out of school, you're setting him up from school to prison. So that is the school to prison pipeline.
It's very clear when you look at the data and start seeing that, in South Stockton, we have one of the highest rates of illiteracy in the nation. When you're sending a child to a school that has a 0 to 1% literacy rate, that the conditions are so stark that you're sending them to a failed system. We're working diligently at trying to reverse that, but that's the first step. Children learn to read so they can read to learn, and that denies them the opportunity to continue with their growth and trajectory.
This isn't just an issue in Stockton, right? The school to prison pipeline is a systemic issue around the country. What actually played into this becoming a pipeline?
At the age of 15, I was tried as an adult and sent to prison, but at that time I couldn't even read or write. So what type of education did I have? Little or none.
We declared a literacy crisis close to 8 years ago, but failed to do anything to recover from that. This at the same time that we're suffering from an economic crisis that hit us harder than anywhere else, that affected communities of color more than anywhere else. And again, the policies, for example, that were passed really, I think, left a lot of our children behind and frankly created this literal pipeline into incarceration.
We grow up in these communities, and it's strictly redlining, the redlining the neighborhoods. Certain individuals growing up in certain neighborhoods, you have schools in these neighborhoods that predominantly, like we said, black and brown folks are going to these schools, and it's a failure. It's a setup, and it's a failure. They have issues that we are dealing with at home, issues in the community, and you want these young men and young women to go to school and try to get an education. But again, we have all this trauma that we're dealing with, and we normally don't go to seek therapy and counseling, right? Because that's something that culturally that we frown upon. But here at Fathers and Families, we have a trauma recovery center where we help young men and women to deal and cope with their issues, so that way we can have a better opportunity at getting an education. We're just blessed to have the agency that we have to help us deal with these issues, so that way we can slow down or at least try to stop that school to prison pipeline.
Sammy, could you tell me a little bit more about what's your actual personal story that made you want to create such a phenomenal organization? This isn't work that everyone's doing. So what made you want to do that work?
Well, I think there's been a series of things that have happened in my life that really became a critical issue that we started addressing. First and foremost, we have a saying here: "Nothing about us without us is for us." I can't breathe. Right? Was a cry heard all around the world. Climate change has collided with the social political climate and pandemic to create the perfect storm that has highlighted the toxic compounded racial inequities and structural racism with its burdens and barriers shouldered by people of color. Can't breathe was something that we haven't been able to do. We couldn't breathe long before COVID-19 decimated our community. Stockton knew what it was like to live amid an epidemic of a war that targeted black and brown communities, the epidemic of a mortgage crisis and years of gentrification that pushes hardworking families out of their homes, the epidemic of an economy that relies on our labor but denies working people dignity and respect, an epidemic of trauma, illiteracy, and violence caused by cycles of poverty, which left people hurting, hopeless, and with few opportunities for change. The interesting thing about Stockton is just it's a tale of two cities, much like the rest of America. We're the most diverse city in America, yet we're also the most segregated city in America. And this has to do with policies born again, redlining that is actually not too distant and dark past where there's been a history of segregation here. And I think that this has resulted in this crisis that we've been experiencing for the last 30 plus years as a city.
We're going to move over to talk a little bit about the work that not only you all are doing, the systemic change that you're trying to create, but some of the collaboration that you actually now have with some of the captains in Stockton, and that specifically being Mayor Michael Tubbs, right? Raymond, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that relationship? And because it's a very interesting story, and just the work that you and Sammy have been able to do in collaboration with the mayor's office.
I've known his father, Michael Senior Tubbs, who I've known also on the streets. It was a buddy of mine that we grew up with, got up in the system. We were at the same institutions. We ended up living together. While we were there, his son would come up. His son was just a baby at this time. And years later, I would end up coming home and seeing signs all around before he was even the mayor, when he wanted to be on city council. And I was like, Michael Tubbs, is this my boy that I just time with, or did he beat me out because I hadn't seen him? I had been transferring from prison to prison, and coming and seeing his name, and I was with my brother. And he's like, "Nah, that's his son. He's running for city council." I was like, "Oh wow, that's a trip. We got to support this brother." You know what I'm saying? And so that's how that relationship started coming, and then working with Fathers and Families. We're a nonprofit organization. How can we work together to build a better community? And that's how that relationship started. Michael coming into our office and just trying to do things to help him suit his position in city council, and then support him becoming the mayor. And things have been taken off from there, and it's just been a great journey.
So I've known Michael's family for years as well. When Michael was getting ready to graduate, I sat down with him and I asked him, brother, what are you going to do after your graduation? He goes, I don't know. He's working at the Obama White House. He had all these different opportunities coming in. Young brother coming out of Stanford. His options were limitless. And I just asked him point blank and simple, brother, how many young people must we bury in our city before you come back and serve your own community? And so I think that's when he actually, made a very formidable decision to come back in and do what he can to support the community.
There's a lot of really amazing things happening in Stockton in general that are starting to actually get tested in other parts of the country and the world. Things like universal basic income and, Stockton scholars. There's no one cut solution to ending the school to prison pipeline, right? But what are some of the things that we should be advocating for?
We have a lot of homelessness that we have to deal with, and a lot of that is individuals coming home from doing time. You come home from doing time and you don't really have support. And a lot of times you need the first two things you need housing and you need income. So that's one of the issues. The other one is low income families and this COVID crisis that hit in. We have a lot of Spanish speaking folks that don't have legal documentation, so they can't work. And so, how do we support them folks? And then we have these young individuals who want to work, who want to go to school, but due to COVID, they're without right now. And so, I would just like to see those three things be addressed and dealt with.
This isn't isolated just to Stockton, right? This is something that can happen at any other part of the country. So I guess that leads me to ask you, Sammy. So how does something like Fathers and Families go from being this idea to this phenomenal organization? Like, can you actually give us some of the special sauce? Because I'm sure that there's people in other parts of the world and other parts of the country, of course, who want to know, like, how do I actually go? How do I get it off the ground?
The fact of the matter is that I'm the only formerly incarcerated executive director that I know about in our region. There was a handful of us in California. And like I said, we wanted something different to begin a new lineage. We believe that the future can heal the past. And if I heal, then my children will no longer have to have a basic income. They will no longer need intervention. They won't need our organization. I think that we've been very adaptable. We've been more efficient and more effective than local government. We do it community-based groups, nonprofits. We play a significant role in the development of healthier outcomes for children, families, and communities. And we do the work that the private sector refuses and the public sector cannot. We are the third sector. The fact of the matter is that we move people. And if you can move people towards something, towards healing and harmony and empowerment, then you have your makings of a sustainable strategy that can be transformative. At the end of the day, we're going to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. That means we have to dismantle white supremacy in Stockton.
We are in, our own individual neighborhoods, but we're in one big neighborhood that is America, right? So with that being said, Raymond, there are people who are like you all over the country, people who have come from hardship who want to give back. For those people, especially young people, what would you say to people outside of Stockton?
Like Tubb said, man, we're gonna upset the setup. You know, it was set up for me to be incarcerated. A lot of our folks growing up in the neighborhood, we were destined for only a few things, and that was either prison, death, or some type of institutions, right? And redemption. Redemption is big. You know, I made it out, and what am I gonna do with my life now? And I want a lot of youngsters to know out there, or even the OGs, you know, we're out here now. We can make a difference. We don't have to continue to repeat the cycle that has been killing our folks for generations and generations. Let's rebuild the next generation and make it strong so that way they don't have to replicate the things that we've gone through.
What do you each hope that people take from Stockton on my mind, and what impact do you hope that it has on people who are disenfranchised in any way, whether it be in this country or any other country where they might see it?
So the thing that you can take from this film is that no matter who you are, no matter what you were told, you can make a difference and you can make a worldwide difference.
You can't create transformative change at a distance. You have to be up close and personal.
The film is hopeful. The film is, full of miracles and full of compassion and passion. But the film also leaves us with the fact that there's work to do, right? And that's something that I personally hope everyone takes from this. There's work to do in terms of the school to prison pipeline. There's work to do in terms of white supremacy. There's work to do in terms of Stockton and Detroit and Harlem and Tallahassee and so on and so forth, right? So, gentlemen, I appreciate the conversation.
No doubt, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, brother, for inviting us.
Pleasure to be on with y'all.